But it's gonna be hard for me to go through this episode. I can't go through the motions. Anyways, welcome back, everybody, to the best music podcast on this side, on all sides of the Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm
confident tonight, are we?
I'm officially declaring it that this is the best music podcast on both sides of the Mississippi. The podcast is called Hey, Listen to This, and it is hosted by two dashingly good-looking men who share the same middle name. I am the one. I am the only. I am the one who brings the thunder, Ryan James Kearns.
I am the one, the only, the one who brings the rain, I guess, Matthew James Durzik.
And what we do here, if this is your first time, checking us out, hey, welcome. Secondly, what we do here is, every week me and Matt take turns picking projects, albums that we're going to discuss, track by track. It could be for a couple of different reasons why we bring the album to the table. It could be like as simple as like, hey, this is a classic album. Or, hey, this is an album that was released this year that we want to talk about. And what else could bring an album to the table, Matt?
Just, again, maybe it's something that we like, something that's in our vinyl collections. Or, very generally, something that we listen to is like, oh, wait, what? I need the other person to listen to this. We need to talk about this. It's almost like a concerned parent is like, we need to talk about this. I hear you've been listening to the new Jeff Goldblum album.
Oh, man. So, that being said, speaking about Jeff Goldblum, what did we cover last week, Matt?
Not Jeff Goldblum. We covered one Mr. Frank Zappa and his debut album with his band, The Mothers of Invention, from 1966, called Freak Out. One of the first double albums ever released in rock music. One of the first ever experimental albums released in rock music. And one that we both came away with liking a lot. It was your first time having experienced it. Me, it was my first time in a long time, but my first 10 in a long time, and you gave it a 9, so we both came away with strong feelings about that. And if you have not heard our feelings about that, you can go ahead and listen to the episode either now or when you're done with this one. So this one, what are we doing, Ryan?
So, we're going to change it up a little bit. Typically here we talk about albums, but there's a other form of release that I feel like me, myself, as a music listener and a music lover, like I need to appreciate it a little bit more, and that's exploring EPs, like shorter releases from artists. And, there was an EP that was released this year. Quite recently, within the past month or so, that has caught my attention, has been in my rotation a little bit, and that is the brand new EP by the band called Bon Iver. There's a couple different ways people actually pronounce that band. Apparently, there was actually some debate about it, but I actually Googled it today. So Bon Iver is the actual pronunciation of that group name. And the EP is called SABLE. Now, a little bit about, what is a Bon Iver? Well, first of all, let me take you through a tour. I didn't know how to transition out of there, man.
I could hear the dial tones going off.
Oh, man, it's been an interesting 24 hours for me.
It really has been.
Bon Iver, the frontman of that group is one Justin Vernon. And he started the group as more like an independent project back in July 2007 by releasing the highly acclaimed hipster indie darling album forever ago. And the reason why that album has a lot of hype behind it is the fact that the majority of the album was recorded while Vernon spent 3 months isolated in a cabin in western Wisconsin. And if you do that, good music's about to pop up.
Of course.
And Bon Iver as a group, Justin added members as it was starting to gain a little bit more traction, a little bit more songwriting, and they had a self-titled album released in 2012, and in that year, that's where Bon Iver, really blew up in terms of, popularity. They won a Grammy for Best Alternative Music Album, and also that year, they won, the forever acclaimed Best New Artist Grammy.
Oh, no, the Best New Artist.
Yeah, I forget, who did they beat out in that running?
In 2012?
Yeah.
Let me see, because you're right that there is this sort of, weird curse with the Best New Artist at the Grammys, because usually that's marked with a kiss of death, as in you're never going to succeed in this business ever again if you win the Best New Artist Grammy. Some names that have immediately come to mind for me: Starland Vocal Band, of all friggin' winners, beating out the likes of Boston and Wild Cherry in 1977. Debbie Boone winning in 1978 over Foreigner. And the list goes on and on and on. But to answer your question about who Bon Iver beat in the year of 2012, some familiar names in here, including the band Perry, Skrillex, J. Cole, and Nicki Minaj.
Ooh.
Bon Iver beat all of them. And somehow that's not as weird as the year before, where those who may remember infamously, Esperanza Spalding won Best New Artist, beating out the likes of Mumford & Sons, Florence and the Machine, Drake, and Justin Bieber.
It might be the hipster nerd in me. I actually like Esperanza Spalding.
I've wanted to get into her. I never have.
Yeah. I mean, maybe after this recording, I can do some album recommendations for you.
Okay.
But yeah, getting back to Bon Iver as a whole, fast forward through a couple of years, after 2012, he ends up collaborating with Kanye West. Is featured prominently in the highly touted album that Kanye released, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. And then he released a couple, Justin Vernon himself, he had a couple, side projects away from Bon Iver, and, he released a couple of albums with the main group. I'm not sure what the exact years are, but there's, the album I, and the other album was 22 Million. And yeah, that's basically Bon Iver's discography and journey up until this point. And essentially in September of this year, after years of touring in support of their previous album, the group dropped the single Spewside and announced a 3-song EP, which we're going to be covering today, Sable. And, the main concept behind this EP is, they wanted to get back to, the nuts and bolts of what made Justin Vernon and Bon Iver, such a musical draw, such an important musical act in the first place, by just getting back to the guitar and vocal aspect of what Justin can bring to the table. And yeah, my experience of Bon Iver as a whole, I discovered them when they really blew up, 2011, 2012 with the self-titled album that won them a Grammy. I liked a couple singles off of that album, and liked a couple singles here and there off of their previous album, and a couple other tracks here or there, but nothing really as a whole complete package I was never really taken away from. I actually thought their self-titled album that was released was leaning a little too far into the whole 80s aspect, and I really didn't dig that. However, when 2016 rolled around, 22 Million, it really showed a much different side to Bon Iver than I've heard before, and I was really taken back by it. It was a difficult listen for me. Took a couple times, but that was the first full project from the group that I fully appreciated from head to toe. And then in 2019, when he released I, it was kind of following along that same kind of experimental side that he really fell in love with and explored during his Kanye West days. Really did dig that album as well. And, like, over the years, I grew more appreciation for, like, the self-titled album and, like, the Forever Touted for Emma Forever Ago that was released in 2007. So, yeah, overall, like, I've always really appreciated Justin Vernon and Bon Iver as a whole. But, like, I don't think I own a single one of these records on vinyl. Not that I'm ever, like, opposed to owning it. It's just usually really expensive.
Right. Before I get into my much more limited experience with Bon Iver, I love the fact that, again, because we've talked about this so many times, as in the Grammys not getting it right. You mentioned that they're sort of acclaimed for Emma Forever was from 2007.
Yeah.
And they won Best New Artist in 2012. Does someone not know how a calendar works?
Actually, the Pokemon Slowpoke is running the Grammys.
Oh, you know what? Now that you mention it, that makes complete sense. I apologize. Thank you to the underrated Slowpoke for being the head of the American Recording Music Arts Grammy, whatever the name of that thing is. My experience with Bon Iver is much more limited. I've never really listened to any Bon Iver, period. My understanding of what he was pretty much came from you, honestly. I learned it from you, Ryan. Because in 2012, like, I was getting into some of this stuff, but I was mostly listening to, like, a lot of stuff I listen to now, like 90s country, a little pop here and there. And every once in a while, I'd step outside my comfort zone and listen to something new. But at the same time, I cannot continue without mentioning the one thing about Bon Iver that I did listen to back in that day, and that is the link I sent you the other night of Bon Joviver, which, for those of you who've not seen it, it's about a 1.5-minute clip on YouTube of a bunch of guys singing You Give Love a Bad Name in the style of Bon Iver. It is an internet treasure. Go check that out. But really, aside from that, this is my first real exposure to Bon Iver as a whole, and I was curious whenever you mentioned it last week that we were going to do this. I was like, oh, now I kind of have to listen to Bon Iver instead of just putting it on the to-do later shelf. So here we are, talking about SABLE from 2024.
So, yeah. You want to kick it off here?
I will kick it off because this is ultimately a 3-track EP, but technically speaking, it is a 4-track EP. The first track, more or less, being an introductory track. It's just, the title is an ellipsis. And I have 3 things to say about this particular track. Number 1, my first note was, indeed. Number 2, I played it for Rachel, my girlfriend, and she was like, is that like the weather tone? Is that like a alert tone that I'm hearing? Which is kind of what it sounds like. And third, and most controversially, how in the hell are there 3 songwriting credits on this song? You want to explain that one to me?
I could not at all, man. Like,
Because I looked it up and I'm like, wait a minute. How did 3 people write this song? How did anybody write this song? This sounds like someone took like one of those old toy keyboards you would find at like Toys R Us, slapped their hand on it for 12 seconds, and that said, cut.
Genius!
Right, exactly. I mean, it's not bad. I mean, it is what it is, but I saw that at 3 songwriting credits. I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding me.
Well, you have a lot more notes than I do, man.
I'm sure I do.
Yeah. My only note is it sets up the album pretty well. Because as we're gonna like dive into with this, EP, it's gonna be hard for me to like switch up that noun there, but a lot of the themes and a lot of the themes, at least for like the first like 2 tracks here, are about like anxiety and dealing with like grief and everything like that. So like you hear that high-pitched noise, that could be just like anxiety.
Yeah, that's true. It very much is, because it sounds like the thing that everyone's phone goes off when there's an Amber Alert during a baseball game. I've been there. It has happened. And by the way, before we continue, for those of you who watch this on YouTube like I did, If you just look up the video for the next track, which is Things Behind Things Behind Things, it starts and includes the opening track of Ellipsis.
So, speaking about that track, we'll pivot over to that track here. And, yeah, so this, again, like, I mentioned how, like, you know, this EP was meant to bring back Bon Iver to much more of a less experimental side, more of, like, an acoustic singer-songwriter aspect. And this is a phenomenal song, dude. Like how it begins is such a dizzying effect, at least with that guitar loop. It almost seems like a pedal effect or something like that. And I love how purposeful that was, because, like, you know, you think about, like, you know, how this song here talks about just dealing with, like, you know, anxiety and just, like, you know, being locked in motion. Like, for that dizzying effect to take place, like, it gives an excellent backdrop to what this song is ultimately about. And, like, even, like, how, like, the verses are structured, you get the repetition of, like, you know, phrases, like, you know, prime example right out of the gate, it goes, "I would like the feeling," and that's repeated 3 times, and on the 3rd time, Justin adds the word "gone" on there. And I love, even with the concept of, like, you know, how he talks about things behind things behind things, and, like, you know, it's that repetition's a very nice effect, and just even the messaging behind the song as a whole is phenomenal. Just the concept of, like, things behind things behind things, and rings within rings within rings. It's talking about, like, how, like, you know, some people will, like, you know, approach, like, you know, people that are dealing with anxiety and, like, going through a rough time and be like, it's okay, just be happy. It's not that easy, man. Like, you know, everything is very, very complicated. Like, you know, once great philosopher Shrek said, ogres are like onions. They have layers.
And we have layers.
And, like, just overall, like even, like, the lyric that reads, "I get caught looking in the mirror on the regular. What I see resembles some competitor." Like, you know, sometimes as human beings, we get caught, like, you know, like, navel gazing and, like, you know, just really just looking at, like, what the world is from our own standpoint. And, like, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, like, when you really do some self-examination, you are your own worst enemy. You got to overcome what you are bringing to the table. And once you overcome yourself, things get a little bit better, because you control what you can control, and you control yourself at the end of the day. I think that's all I have coming out of the gate. I mean, just the backing like, the effect that he has on his vocals works out really well, and just overall, like, a lot of the songs in this EP, this track here acts more of as a therapy session for the listener, and I like that, because the way that it was structured, it's almost like a therapy session, not only for the listener, but for Justin himself. And, like, when we talked about, like, a couple of, like in a lot of reviews that we've discussed, like, it's amazing how, like, you know, an artist can go through something, express their grief, and use it as, like, the listener can use that as a platform for, like, you know, processing their own grief. It's a beautiful thing, man.
It really is a beautiful thing, and I love, the lines of, you know, at the end of the chorus where he's saying things behind things behind things, and there's rings within rings within rings, because basically what he's saying there is that when it comes to dealing with anxiety, that not only is there so many different layers to each thing that we have to deal with, but once the things that we have to deal with get multiplied, then it really just sends you in a fit of chaos and frustration that you may not be able to deal with a calming presence. So again, that really nails it down a lot as well. I agree with a lot of the stuff that you're saying. I think the harmonies helped big time on this track. And again, even though I had not listened to Bon Iver very much previously, if at all, before this review, I could tell just by the way that this track is presented that this is a Bon Iver track. Because it has the folk vibes, it has a little bit of the electronica vibes with the keyboard in there. It sounds very 2012, and I mean that as a compliment, because it is just so like right dart bullseye indie folk electronica vibes that it's just like you know who sings this. And again, if you probably had to give it to someone, say who sings this, I'm sure a few people would be able to guess right on this. But yeah, the way it describes confusion, the way it describes anxiety, and the fact that it's delivered in such a calming presence too is a nice touch. I really like the song a lot.
Before we even move on, I don't know how you prepared the review. I just basically said, hey, I have a favorite song, and that's it. Because it's going to be weird for me, like, oh, here, I have a top 3. There's only 3 real songs.
Yeah, no. I have a top 1 and I have a bottom 1.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And but to be fair, I'm gonna spoil a little bit. I like all these songs, but there's one part of one song that kind of makes me feel like gives me a little bit of pause.
And it wasn't the first song?
It was not the first song.
The ...
No, it wasn't.
Wow.
Oh, I can't disqualify it for being what it is.
Yeah.
You know.
It knows what it is, and it does it really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, this song here, Things Behind Things, is not my favorite song off the album. It's an excellent way to introduce the album. Mm-hmm. And right away, like, just, I know I'm going to be going back to the song time in, time out again, especially whenever, like, I'm going through some stuff. And it's going to go right in the category of music for me that is, like, Jesus, etc., and Graceland 2 from Punisher by Phoebe Bridgers.
Right.
Just therapeutic music. Like, whenever Ryan's sad, this is Ryan's sad girl music.
Right, yeah, Ryan's sad playlist.
Yeah. But, yeah, you ready to move on to the next track?
The next track is Speyside, and immediately before I even heard a second of the song, I was like, hey, Speyside, I've heard that word before. Going back to one of our past reviews, the title track from Bleed American by Jimmy Eat World, where they reference Speyside before the chorus. The only song off that album that still remains on my USB stick in my car since the review. Even though I did put Sweetness at number 1, that song, for whatever reason, has still managed to linger because it's just a great driving song. Yeah. Just full on hit the gas on the pedal, blast the speakers, and then apologize to the cop later. But Speyside, as far as Bon Iver puts it, this track is much different. It is a very stripped down acoustic song, and the acoustic guitar sounds fantastic. It sounds very intimate. It's produced very fantastically. And Justin Vernon's vocals also fantastic. Because of its sort of sparse confessional tone that it sets throughout the entirety of the song, which is good because this is a confessional song. This is basically Bon Iver, or Justin Vernon in particular, saying that, hey, I'm an asshole. I've done some bad things, and I'm not sure how I've made it this far with you forgiving me, or even the fact that you may not forgive me anymore. Maybe you can help me, maybe not. And the fact that it's referencing Speyside, which for those who don't know is basically a Scottish whiskey, does provide a little bit of a dark twist at the end of the song, saying, meet me where there's whiskey and maybe I'll figure out all my things. Basically saying, maybe the way I'm going to find this out is the worst way possible. It is a very haunting song about one man's destructive behavior. And I will say that, again, not to get into any type of sexual politics whatsoever, but this definitely feels like a guy song. Like, it's a song that talks about the downfall of being a man, particularly a man who just feels that the best way to handle things is usually the worst way that ultimately turns out to be. And I, as someone who's sort of felt that in my own bones, related strongly to the song, and it is my favorite song on the CP.
Okay. This is not my favorite.
I knew it wasn't going to be, and we'll get to why. As soon as I heard the other one, I was like, this is... Well, again, we'll talk about it, but I knew damn well what your favorite song was going to be, and it wasn't this.
You know me too well, man.
I know you way too well.
So, not going to really touch on too much more of what you already covered here, because you did a great job, like, expanding out the song to the listener here.
Thank you.
But, like, what really drew me in here, like, other things I want to talk about, it's just Vernon does a great job sucking the listener into the track. It was, like, the way I can compare it to is, like, how Phoebe Bridgers delivers her vocals. Like, you sit and you pay attention to whatever Vernon's doing whenever you hear this track here specifically. Like, it's fantastic in his delivery. And the moment where he pulls back the instrumentation at the end, wherever he's talking about, but maybe you can still make a man from me, chills, dude. Like, I literally got chills. Like, this is just an awesome song. Like, I really have no complaints about it whatsoever. And, like, one section I want to highlight here lyrically is verse 2, whenever he's talking about, it serves to suffer, make a hole in my foot. And I hope you look. As I fill my book, what a waste of wood. Nothing's really happened like I thought it would. Now, you think about, like, the concept of, like, making a hole in your foot. You're not going to be able to move. You're not going to be able to walk without pain. So, like, Justin is just saying, like, I deserve not to move forward. I deserve to suffer for what I've done. And I hope you look. And he's just like, I hope you see that I am suffering and I'm, like, just paying for my sins. And I hope you look as I fill my book, which is basically like kind of maybe an allusion to, like, an autobiography. But he follows it up with the line, what a waste of wood. Another self-hatred filled line there, being like, hey, my life isn't really worth writing about. And, like, that book is just going to be a waste of wood. Whenever I heard that, I was just like, I know it's on the surface a pretty basic, like, verse there, but I really did appreciate what Vernon was going for there. And it's just another way of him examining what he's going through, and listeners can gravitate towards that and process what they're going through. It's absolutely amazing. I love whenever artists do this, man.
I do too. And again, the fact that it is presented in such this, again, very confessional, sparse presentation, it very much provides, there's no distractions, there's no big swells of strings or, guitar solos. Not that that would be a bad thing, but in this case, it would take away from the, again, very hushed ideology. So I think we both agree that Space Side is a really, really good track, right?
Yo, yeah, absolutely, man. Like, I think it's amazing how each of the three tracks here, like, approaches a different way of, like, processing grief and just going through, like, stuff in life. So yeah, it's a great song.
And now that brings us to the final track on this EP, called Award Season. And for those of you who are listening and doing your homework, you may realize that Ryan has not announced his favorite song yet, and I have not yet announced my least favorite song yet. So in the honor of positivity, I'm going to let you go first.
All right, so I'm going to bring it up, and then you're just going to bring it right back down to a normal.
We'll see.
So for me, right away out of the gate here, I was instantly just blown away whenever, like, the first set of lyrics we hear from the track are, I can handle way more than I can handle. Like, for any of those people who are going through stuff who feel like, hey, like, I can't handle much more, or like, hey, like, the thing I'm about to tackle is just way too much, I don't think I can handle this. like if you listen to this song here and you take away at least that first line, like that should give you strength, man. I absolutely love that. And like how he follows that up with, so I keep reaching for the handle to flood my heart. Like he's talking about like, hey, like, I just keep reaching to like, keep pouring more stuff into myself. And at this point we see Justin Vernon going through the final stage of like, processing his grief and coming out on the other side of like accepting hope. Like, in the previous track it was about dealing with anxiety, accepting guilt. Now he's accepting hope. And for the main reason why I love this song so much, it almost feels more like a gospel song than an indie rock song for me. Like, because the guitar is not anywhere to be found here, and it just seems like Justin is delivering a sermon on the Mount.
Well, I mean, hey, that's usually where the best sermons are held, from what we've been taught.
Oh man, I can't believe I said that. Like, that was all sorts of sacrilegious there. Lord, don't come for me. But yeah, and here I want to highlight the name of the EP, because that name is dropped here in this track here, specifically with the lyrics. I'd been received, but I'm a sable, and honey, us the fable. Now, when Bon Iver, when he was asked about, like, what does the word sable mean? Apparently it really doesn't mean much. It was just a fumble on his part, but the way he looks at it, it's just somebody who, it's just going through a dark time in your life, going through a dark grief processing period, and just somebody who's constantly experiencing like trauma, like just somebody who's always going through stuff. And it's amazing, like, we talk about this EP on the through a very difficult time for our country right now.
Yeah, for those who are wondering, we are recording this on November 6th, 2024, the day after Election Day. And for those historians wondering what happened, go look it up. It's, yeah.
Yeah, like, even like political affiliations aside, the listener who's listening to like us right now, like, I'm pretty sure you can tell if you go on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, even Threads, you can see, like, people are going through some emotions. Right?
Yes.
So.
And by some chance, if you are also on any of those websites, if you go to Hey Listen to This, you can find us there. On X specifically, it's TT Hey Listen. You can also find us on YouTube at Hey Listen to This. And if you want to reach out to us directly, you can go to our Gmail, which is tthaylisten@gmail.com, for some future recommendations. I know we didn't have that planned, but we're going with it anyway.
All good, man. So, fleshing out more reasons why I love this song here so much is the fact that the group plays with the dynamics so well, and then the overall instrumentation of it adds to the sincerity of the song. The way that the song dies out as the last set of lyrics plays is so good. Talking about, like, it's so hard to explain and the facts are strange, but what will stay, everything we made. And talking about, like, hey, like, after we're gone, like, the things that will stand the test of time are, like, the things that we made. Like, because, like, we're not going to stand the test of time, but our families will. The impact that we had on people's lives will. And just for me, this whole EP, and specifically this song here, is going to go into the just songs that transcend music for me and just act as a vehicle for processing grief and understanding life's complexities at the end of the day. And for a simple song to do that for me, I just absolutely love.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with my one criticism of the song that lands it at the bottom for me. and I'll get into what I really like about the song, because I really like the song a lot too.
Yeah.
But the one thing I could not get past with this song is how, unlike with Speyside or Things Behind Things Behind Things, it felt like the wording of the verses felt a little on the forced side. It felt very wordy instead of having the flow that the other ones did. And again, this is just my thing. Like, I will agree, the first lines of this song are great, where he's saying, I can handle way more than I can handle, so I keep reaching for the handle to flood my heart. That is a great opening line. The next line's not so much, which are, and the Spaniard in the song that I have pandered to is always handing the anvil, saying, that's for you. And one of my pet peeves with a lot of songs, and it doesn't matter if it's Bon Iver or any artist really, is that I understand you having little like in jokes or in references that only you and maybe a couple other listeners get, but at some point it gets a little too like esoteric. And if I need an entire book of cliff notes to understand what the hell you're saying, it's a slight turn off for me. Now, that being said, the rest of the notes I have for this track are very positive, because I agree the instrumentation on this track is wonderful. The sparse tone of the vocal, like you say, very gospel-esque, very sparse tone. The reason I knew this was going to be your favorite song is two reasons. One, the sax solo, because that's a sax solo. You are a sax player and you like sax solos. But two, and more importantly, I'm reminded of our Future Teens episode where you gave high praise to DTFL for its sparse tone. And so I'm thinking, this song has a sparse tone and a sax solo. It's going to be his favorite song. We're going to have a bit of an issue here. But again, the instrumentation, including the sax solo, is fantastic. The sparse tone is impeccably executed. I really like, too, right before the sax solo, the introduction of the very faint piano and steel guitar. It sounds amazing. The harmonies as well sound amazing. I really like this track a lot, too. And it's one of those ones where the words themselves would put it at the bottom of the three. But much like you were last week with Hungry Freaks Daddy, I don't think this is a bad song at all. I think this is a good song. And also, one last note I have is that at the end of the track, there's this fade out and then a sort of fade back in at the very end. And a lot of people are saying that, well, I saw at least one YouTube comment, let me put it that way, that said that, maybe because there's a little bit of a fade in after the fade out, maybe there's more to come, because some people are speculating that this might be it for Bon Iver, but that sort of leaves the door open at the very end. I don't know if you have any expounding on that, or if you think that I'm just reading way too much into someone else's YouTube comments. But this is a great song.
So, a couple of things to end off the discussion of this track here. One, I'm gonna piggyback not piggyback, but kind of continue off the conversation about hey, is this it for Bon Iver, or is there more to come? I don't know.
We don't know the man.
But I know, I read somewhere today that the official title of the album, of the EP, is SABLE, and people there's a comma. There could be a part 2 here.
Kind of reminds me of the old George Carlin joke of, if you play this new Beatles record backwards, it screws up your needle.
I love it. But just to wrap up the whole discussion of this track here, and the idea of going through and processing Rafe as a whole and just going through motions no matter what life throws at you, one set of lyrics just instantly just made me take this track to a whole new level. It's whenever Justin's talking about just the concept of renewal, just the concept of just hope in the face of despair. The lyrics read, "You can be remade, you can live again. What's pain, now's gain. A new path gets laid. and you know what is great, nothing stays the same. So like no matter what you're going through, nothing's gonna stay the same. You're only going through a dark period right now, and that pain is gonna be used as a vehicle to transform you into a better person. And like it's a very basic concept, but like people say, hey, it's not the end of the world. Like, you know, the sun will come out tomorrow. Like, you know, you have the opportunity to, like, you know, restart, live again. Just that whole concept of like restoration and renewal always, like, you know, gets me, and I absolutely love this song.
No, it is a great song. Again, if not for the sort of in-joke wordiness or in-reference wordiness of some of the sections of the song, I would probably say it's probably one of my favorites too, if not my favorite, but that just kind of sank it a little bit for me. But otherwise, a very strong ending to the song and a very strong ending to this EP. And you know what that means.
We did it?
We did it!
We discovered what a SABLE is.
Comma.
So I'm gonna go first in terms of my overall thoughts and like, you know, ratings of this EP here. One, I love that we did an EP instead of a full album here. Mainly because it's a great exercise for us to see what's a concentrated effort from an artist. Because if one of these tracks for me really, really just sunk, like, you know, really was like a 2 out of 10, like, it really would have impacted the overall impression I have on the EP. But for those of you who have been listening and have been recording this podcast with me, probably know that I like this EP a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And Justin Vernon and the whole group as a collective delivered a worthwhile experience for me. And like I said throughout like this whole EP, it's really great whenever an artist can, like, you know, like process their own grief, combat their own demons, and the listener can latch onto that and process their own grief as a result. And just each song here is just so fucking good. And yeah, I have no other notes other than I'm gonna give this a 10 out of 10.
A 10 your turn for a 10 this week.
Yeah, so last week it was your 10. This week it is my 10, man.
It is your 10. No, I am right there with you as far as having strong positive feelings about this album. This isn't something I would seek out like immediately. Like, it didn't leave me thinking, oh my goodness, I have to listen to it over and over and over again and make it my religion. But at the same time, as someone who had not listened to Bon Iver before, for this to be as good as it is mind-blowing. Again, the lyrics are there for the most part. The instrumentation is there all of the time. And it feels, again, for such a very anxiety-driven set of lyrics throughout the EP, the tone of it being as sparse as it is, as calming as it is a nice yang to the yin that is being explored here. And I really think, as far as being an introduction to Bon Iver, because this is only about 12 minutes long, it's not very long at all. It's a really good introduction to Bon Iver for those who have not gotten into him, or them for that matter. Bon Iver is a band, Justin Vernon is the person. All that to say, I am going to give this a strong 8.5 out of 10.
Oh, what does that math out to?
Let's see, 18.5, divide that by 2, 9.25?
9.25 out of 10, because
Math
works, everybody. So, my next album recommendation for me, like, I'm just going to keep it as simple as apple pie itself. And I'm going to recommend people check out For Emma Forever Ago by Bon Iver. Their most, I don't know at this point, but, like, you know, if this EP was meant as a vehicle for the group to get back to their roots, that is their roots. Like, this is what they're drawing inspiration from. So if you like this EP, Go back to their debut album.
I'm right there with you on at least taking that recommendation because, again, for it to be so acclaimed that not only it interested, the hipsters of the day, but also won Kanye West before they even won Best New Artist. Again, make it make sense, Grammys. Yeah, now I'll have to check that one out. My recommendation is going to be a little different, speaking of the Grammys, and it's something I did not mention in my discussion of award season there, because one note I left out is that in the lyrics, in the first verse, there's a line that goes, "But then you came to me from Olympic heavy duty. We both needed so much soothing, played you Ricky Lee." That is a reference to Ricky Lee Jones. And she is also an award winner for Best New Artist at the Grammy. She won it in 1980. So, based on that lyric, ironically, I had some issues with the lyrics in award season. That is where I'm going to go with my recommendation. It is her eponymous debut album from 1979 called Ricky Lee Jones. And not only that, I'm not going to say anything else about it because I'm going to go full Captain Phillips here and say that is our next album.
That's the ultimate Uno reverse card, man.
It is.
Maybe not in full contextual sake, by the book, but okay, cool. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've not listened to Ricky Lee Jones by Ricky Lee Jones, make sure that you check out that album before next week's review. That way you can have thoughts and opinions about what me and Matt are going to be talking about. But yeah, I think that wraps up this EP discussion pretty well.
It does, and I thank you for recommending it. It was a very good listen to, and again, a strong introduction to Bon Iver for me.
Yeah, and I didn't know what to take away. Well, not take away, but what to expect from this EP from the first time of me listening to it. But you know what I ultimately think at the end of the day?
What's that?
When it comes to life, nothing's really happened like I thought it would.
Don't get